Officer James Brennan drove his police car slowly through the rainy streets of Memphis. The windshield wipers moved back and forth as he sipped his coffee. It was just another Tuesday night shift until his radio crackled. All units near Maple Street. We have a report of a domestic disturbance at 1423 Elm Avenue, apartment 5B. James picked up his radio. Unit 27 responding. I'm 3 minutes away. He turned on his siren and headed to the address. James had been a police officer for 15 years. At 38 years old, he had seen many sad situations, but nothing prepared him for what he would find tonight. When he arrived at the apartment building, it was dark except for one flickering light in the hallway. The building smelled like old cooking and garbage. James knocked on the door of apartment 5B. Police, open up. He heard small voices inside, and then shuffling footsteps. The door opened slightly, and a young girl's face appeared. She looked about 12 or 13, with dark braids and tired eyes. Are you okay? We got a call about trouble here, James said gently. The girl looked behind her nervously before opening the door wider. Our mama hasn't been home for 3 days, she whispered. What James saw inside shocked him. The apartment was dirty and empty of food. But more surprising were the 5 other girls sitting on a worn couch. They ranged from about 2 to 10 years old, all with the same worried eyes as their older sister. I'm Tamika, the oldest girl said. These are my sisters, Leila, Zoe, Keisha, Maya, and little Ava. James radioed for backup and social services. As he waited, he talked with the girls. They told him their mother had problems with drugs. Tamika had been taking care of everyone as best she could, but they ran out of food yesterday. You did a good job looking after your sisters, James told Tamika, her eyes filled with tears. When social services arrived, the worker, Mrs. Wilson, shook her head sadly. We'll need to find placements for them tonight. Unfortunately, with 6 children, they'll likely need to be separated. Separated? James asked, watching the girls hold onto each other tightly. We rarely have foster homes that can take more than 2 children at once, Mrs. Wilson explained. James watched as Tamika gathered her sisters in a huddle. We'll be okay, she told them, but her voice shook. Something stirred inside James. His own childhood had been stable and loving. After his divorce 5 years ago, he had lived alone in a quiet apartment. He had always wanted children but never found the right time. What if I took them? The words came out before James could think them through. Mrs. Wilson looked surprised. You? But you're not a registered foster parent. I could get registered. I have a clean record, stable job, spare room, James said, surprising himself with how sure he felt. Just temporarily, until you find a permanent place where they can stay together. Later that night, after many phone calls and emergency paperwork, James found himself leading 6 tired girls into his apartment. He had never felt more terrified or more certain about anything in his life. You can all sleep in my bedroom tonight, he told them, showing them his neat but plain room. Tomorrow we'll figure everything out. As he made up the couch for himself, little Ava, a 2-year-old, came padding out in bare feet. She looked up at him with big eyes and simply raised her arms to be picked up. James lifted her gently, and she rested her head on his shoulder. In that moment, something in his heart shifted forever. James woke up with a jolt when something small landed on his chest. It was Ava, the youngest sister, smiling at him with her tiny teeth showing. Up, up, she said, bouncing slightly on his stomach. James looked at his phone. It was 6:30 a.m. He had slept on his couch, which was too short for his tall body. His back hurt, but seeing Ava's smile made him forget the pain. Good morning, he said, sitting up. He heard movement in the kitchen and found Tamika trying to reach the cereal boxes on the top shelf. Let me help, James said, easily grabbing the box. He looked around his small apartment with new eyes. His bachelor pad was neat but had nothing for children. No colorful dishes, no kid-friendly food, no toys. I only have coffee and cereal, he admitted to Tamika. We'll need to go shopping today. One by one, the other girls woke up. They were quiet and watchful, studying James when they thought he wasn't looking. He made a quick list in his head. Clothes, shoes, toothbrushes, hair products, school supplies. His phone rang. It was Captain Rodriguez, his boss. Brennan, what's this I hear about you taking in 6 kids last night? The captain asked. It's temporary, sir, James explained, until social services finds a permanent home for all of them together. There was a pause. Take the week off. You'll need it. After breakfast, James loaded all 6 girls into his car. His first stop was Walmart, where he grabbed a shopping cart and looked at the girls helplessly. I don't know what you all need, he admitted. 9-year-old Zoe spoke up for the first time. Tamika knows. Tamika led the way through the store, picking out necessities. James was shocked at how quickly the cart filled up and how expensive everything was. When they passed the toy section, he noticed the younger girls looking but not asking. He stopped the cart. Each of you can pick one toy, he said. The smiles on their faces were worth every penny. Back at the apartment, James' neighbor Mrs. Garcia knocked on the door. She was an older lady who had always been kind to James. I heard children laughing, she said, curious. When she saw all 6 girls, her eyes widened. Oh my! James explained the situation. Mrs. Garcia nodded and returned 10 minutes later with homemade cookies and an offer to help. I raised 5 children, she said, and I noticed these beautiful girls need their hair done. James hadn't even thought about hair care. He watched as Mrs. Garcia showed him how to moisturize and braid the girls' hair. His big police officer hands felt clumsy, but 7-year-old Keisha giggled when he tried to make her braids. You're doing it wrong, she said, but she didn't seem to mind. That afternoon, his sister Jenny visited. She worked as a teacher and brought school enrollment forms. James, this is crazy, she whispered when the girls were playing in the bedroom. You know nothing about raising children, especially girls, and there are cultural things they'll need that you don't understand. I know, James admitted, but they needed someone, and I couldn't let them be split up. Jenny sighed but then smiled. Well, you're lucky to have me. I'll help. That night, after a dinner of pizza, James still needed to learn how to cook. He helped the girls make beds on the floor with blankets and pillows. His apartment was too small, but they made it work. As he tucked 6-year-old Maya in, she looked up at him with serious eyes. Are you going to be our new dad? She asked. James felt his heart skip. Right now, I'm just helping until they find you a permanent home. I hope that takes a really long time, Maya whispered before closing her eyes. James sat on the floor beside the sleeping girls, watching their peaceful faces. What had started as a temporary solution already felt like something much more. 2 weeks passed quickly. James and the girls settled into a routine. Each morning, he drove the 4 oldest girls to school before taking Maya to kindergarten and Ava to Mrs. Garcia for daycare. Then he would rush to work for his shift at the police station. Today was different. James had the day off and was taking the girls to the mall for new shoes. As they walked through the entrance, James noticed people staring. Some smiled, but others looked confused or even disapproving at the white police officer with 6 black girls. Officer Brennan, a voice called. It was Mrs. Peterson, a woman James had helped last year when her car was stolen. She walked over, smiling at first, then looking puzzled. Are these your nieces? She asked, her eyes moving from James to the girls. I'm fostering them, James explained. Mrs. Peterson nodded too quickly. How nice of you. Such a charity. She patted Layla's head like she was a pet. They're so well behaved. James felt uncomfortable but didn't know why. Tamika, however, stiffened beside him. At the shoe store, the girls tried on sneakers. James sat next to 10-year-old Layla, who was unusually quiet. Everything okay? He asked. Layla looked down. That lady talked to us like we were puppies you rescued. James didn't know what to say. He had noticed Mrs. Peterson's tone but hadn't fully understood how it would feel to the girls. Later, at the food court, the family sat eating burgers when 2 security guards walked past, eyeing the older girls carefully. One guard stopped near their table, watching Tamika and Zoe. Is there a problem? James asked, showing his police badge. Just routine patrol, sir, the guard said, quickly walking away. They think we're stealing, Tamika said quietly. It happens all the time. That evening, while the younger girls watched TV, James found Tamika sitting alone on the apartment balcony. Can we talk about what happened today? He asked. Tamika looked at him for a long moment. You don't notice because it doesn't happen to you. Notice what? How people treat us differently. She pointed to her skin. Because of this? James sat down. I see people staring at us, but I thought it was because we're an unusual family. Tamika shook her head. The security guards weren't following you. They were following us. The lady at school yesterday didn't ask if you were Keisha's real dad because she was curious. She asked because she couldn't imagine you choosing to be our father. Her words hit James hard. He had been a police officer for 15 years, but had never truly understood what the black members of his community experienced daily. I'm sorry, he said, meaning it. I want to understand better. My mom used to tell us we have to be twice as good to get half as much, Tamika said. I don't think you know what that feels like. James thought about his own childhood, how doors had always seemed to open for him. How no one followed him in stores or questioned if he belonged. You're right, he admitted. I don't know, but I want to learn. The next day, James called his partner, Officer Dwayne Jackson, who was black. They met for coffee, and James asked questions he had never thought to ask before. Man, I'm glad you're asking, Dwayne said. Those girls need you to understand this stuff. Dwayne suggested books, community groups, and introduced James to his wife, who offered to help with the girls' hair and cultural connections. That night, James started a new bedtime ritual. He read the girls a book about a famous black historical figure, starting with Ruby Bridges. She was so brave, 8-year-old Keisha said sleepily. Yes, she was, James agreed. And so are all of you. As the girls drifted off to sleep, James realized his world was growing larger. He wasn't just providing a home for 6 girls. They were teaching him to see the world through new eyes. 4 months had passed since the girls moved in with James. His small apartment was now filled with colorful drawings on the fridge, hair accessories on every surface, and the constant noise of 6 energetic girls. What once felt overwhelming now felt like home. James sat at the kitchen table going through bills. Raising 6 children was expensive, even with the foster care support money. But that wasn't what worried him. On the table sat a letter from Mrs. Wilson at Social Services. We have found a potential placement for the girls, it read. However, they can only take 3 children at most. We would need to separate the sisters into 2 different homes. The thought of the girls being split up made James's stomach hurt. He looked up as Tamika walked into the kitchen for a glass of water. Everything okay? She asked, noticing his serious face. Just grown-up stuff, James said, trying to smile. Tamika was too smart to fool. Is it about us? Are we moving again? James sighed. Come sit down. He explained the situation as gently as he could. Tamika's eyes filled with tears. We can't be split up, she whispered. I promised my mom I'd keep everyone together. I promised. James reached for her hand. I know. I'm going to call Mrs. Wilson tomorrow and see what other options we have. That night, James couldn't sleep. He paced around the living room, thinking hard. What had started as a temporary solution had become much more. He couldn't imagine his life without the girls now. Their morning chaos, their bedtime stories, even their arguments about bathroom time, all of it had become precious to him. The next morning, James called his sister Jenny. I'm thinking about something crazy, he said. More crazy than taking in 6 kids overnight? Jenny laughed. I'm thinking about adopting them. All of them. Permanently. There was silence on the phone. Jenny. James, this is a huge decision, she finally said. Being a foster parent is one thing. Adoption is forever. I know, James said. They're already my family. That afternoon, James invited Mrs. Wilson to his apartment. She watched as the girls showed her their homework and the new braids James had learned to do. Little Ava climbed into James's lap naturally, resting her head against his chest. Officer Brennan, I can see you bonded with the girls, Mrs. Wilson said. But adoption is a tremendous responsibility. As a single father with a dangerous job, raising 6 girls from a different cultural background. I know it won't be easy, James interrupted, but splitting them up would hurt them more. There's also the matter of their mother, Mrs. Wilson added. She's still in treatment, but she might want to regain custody someday. James nodded seriously. I understand. But until then, they need stability and love. I can give them that. That evening, James sat all the girls down in the living room. Even little Ava sensed this was important and stopped wiggling. I need to ask you all something serious, James began. How would you feel if I tried to adopt you? That means I would be your dad forever, not just your foster dad. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Maya raised her hand like she was in school. Does that mean we would stay together? All of us? She asked. Yes, James promised. All of us together. Zoe looked worried. What about our real mom? James chose his words carefully. Your birth mom will always be your mom. Nothing changes that, but sometimes people need help, and right now, she can't take care of you. Tamika, who had been quiet, finally spoke. Would our last name change? Only if you want it to, James said. The girls looked at each other, having a silent conversation with their eyes. I think it's a good idea, Tamika finally said. But I want to keep my last name to remember my mom. Me too, Layla added. One by one, each girl nodded in agreement. Even Ava shouted, Daddy, which made everyone laugh. That night, after tucking the girls in, James filled out the adoption application forms. His hand shook slightly as he signed his name. This was the biggest decision of his life, but somehow, it also felt like the easiest one he'd ever made. News about James's decision to adopt the girls spread quickly through the neighborhood. Most people were supportive, but not everyone approved. On a warm Saturday morning, James took the girls to the local park. As they played on the swings, James sat on a bench watching them. He noticed a group of mothers looking his way and whispering. Finally, one woman approached him. She had seen him at school pickup with Keisha and Zoe. Officer Brennan, right? I'm Mrs. Taylor, PTA president. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. We'd heard you're adopting those girls. That's right, James said proudly. Mrs. Taylor lowered her voice. Don't you think they should be with someone who understands their culture better? Someone who looks like them? James felt his face grow hot. They need a loving home that keeps them together. That's what I'm providing. But how will you teach them about their heritage? How will you do their hair properly? What about when they face racism? Mrs. Taylor pressed. Before James could answer, a voice spoke from behind them. He's learning. It was Sergeant Diane Carter, a black female officer from James's precinct. She had stopped by the park with her own children, and he has help. Mrs. Taylor looked embarrassed and quickly walked away. Thanks, Diane, James said. Don't mention it. Sergeant Carter sat beside him. But she's not completely wrong. These questions are important. James nodded. I know. I've been reading books, watching videos about hair care, and learning about black history to teach the girls. That's good, Diane smiled. But books aren't enough. Those girls need black women in their lives too. Would you be willing to help? James asked. Maybe spend time with them sometimes. Diane agreed, and soon she began visiting regularly, bringing her daughters to play with the girls and teaching James important cultural lessons. Not all the resistance was so easily handled. One evening, James was grocery shopping with all 6 girls when an older man stopped him in the aisle. You think you're some kind of savior? The man said loudly. Taking these children from their community. The girls grew quiet, watching the confrontation. James felt angry but kept his voice calm. Sir, these are my daughters. We're just buying cereal. Tamika stepped forward bravely. He's our dad now. He chose us, and we chose him. The man seemed surprised by her confident answer and walked away muttering. In the car, James noticed Tamika was unusually quiet. You okay? He asked. People are going to say things like that a lot, aren't they? She asked. Sometimes, James admitted. But what matters is what we think, not them. The next day at the police station, James was surprised when Captain Rodriguez called him into his office. Several officers were already there. Brennan, we heard about what happened at the grocery store, the captain said, and about your adoption plans. James prepared himself for more resistance. Instead, Officer Martinez stepped forward. We took up a collection. He handed James an envelope. For beds, clothes, whatever the girls need. James was speechless as he looked at the generous amount inside. And I'm free weekends to help with any home repairs, said Officer Johnson. My wife is sending some hand-me-downs from our daughters, too. James's partner, Dwayne, clapped him on the shoulder. I told my church group about your family. They want to throw you a proper adoption party when it's final. That evening, James's sister Jenny arrived with a surprise. She had organized a team of volunteers from her school to repaint the apartment and build proper bunk beds for the girls. "The community is behind you, James," she said as they watched volunteers transform the small apartment. "Not everyone, but enough people who matter." As the girls excitedly explored their newly painted bedroom, James felt overwhelmed with gratitude. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but they wouldn't walk it alone. The adoption process moved forward slowly. James hired a lawyer, Ms. Rivera, who specialized in family law. The girls settled into their new life with enthusiasm. Every evening, they did homework together at the kitchen table while James cooked dinner. It wasn't perfect, but they were happy. Then, on a rainy Tuesday, everything changed. James was at work when his phone rang. It was Ms. Rivera, and her voice sounded tense. "Officer Brennan, I've received some news. The girl's biological mother, Letitia Harris, has filed for custody. She's completed a rehab program and wants her children back." James felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He had known this was possible, but hadn't expected it so soon. "What does this mean for the adoption?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "It complicates things," Ms. Rivera explained. "The court always prefers reunification with biological parents when possible. We have a hearing scheduled for next week." That evening, James sat the older girls down to explain the situation. Tamika's face showed no surprise. "I knew she'd come back someday," she said quietly. "She always does." "What happens now?" Layla asked, tears forming in her eyes. "We go to court, and a judge will decide what's best for all of you," James explained. He tried to sound confident, but inside he was terrified of losing them. The day of the hearing arrived. James wore his best suit. The girls were dressed in matching blue dresses that Mrs. Garcia had helped him pick out. Even little Ava seemed to understand the importance of the day, staying unusually quiet. In the courthouse hallway, James saw her for the first time. Letitia Harris, the girl's mother. She looked healthier than in the police photos from the night he'd found the girls. Her hair was neatly styled, and she wore a simple dress. Their eyes met across the hallway. James expected anger, but instead he saw sadness and determination in her gaze. This wasn't going to be simple. Inside the courtroom, the judge, an older woman with kind eyes, listened as both sides presented their cases. "Ms. Harris has completed rehabilitation and secured employment and housing," her lawyer argued. "She is ready to provide for her children now." Ms. Rivera countered, "The children have been thriving with Officer Brennan. Moving them again would disrupt the stability they found. Plus, Ms. Harris has relapsed multiple times before." The judge turned to James. "Officer Brennan, why do you believe adoption is in the best interest of these children rather than reunification with their mother?" James took a deep breath. "Your Honor, I love these girls as if they were born to me. They deserve stability and to stay together as a family. I've created a support network to ensure they stay connected to their cultural heritage. But most importantly, they've chosen me too. We built a family together." The judge nodded, then surprised everyone by asking to speak with the girls privately. One by one, the 4 oldest girls went into the judge's chambers. No one knew what was said, but when Tamika emerged from her meeting, her eyes were red from crying. After a short recess, the judge returned with her decision. "This is not an easy case," she began. "Ms. Harris clearly loves her children and has made significant efforts to improve her situation." James's heart sank. "However," the judge continued, "the children have expressed their wishes clearly. They have found stability and love in their current placement. The older children have articulated mature and thoughtful reasons for wanting to remain with Officer Brennan." The judge looked directly at Letitia. "Ms. Harris, I'm granting primary custody to Officer Brennan, with the adoption to proceed. However, I'm also ordering generous visitation rights for you, starting with supervised visits and potentially expanding based on consistency." Tears streamed down Letitia's face, but she nodded. Outside the courthouse, James approached her cautiously. "Ms. Harris, I want you to know that I'll never keep them from knowing you. You'll always be their mother." Letitia wiped her tears. "Take care of my babies," she whispered before walking away. The battle was over, but the journey had just begun. With the court case behind them, James and the girls needed a bigger place to live. The small apartment was too crowded for 7 people. After weeks of searching, they found a 4-bedroom house in a diverse neighborhood with good schools. Moving day was chaotic. Police officers from James's precinct showed up with trucks and strong arms. The girls ran excitedly through the empty rooms, claiming their spaces. Tamika and Layla get one room, Zoe and Keisha another, and Maya and Ava will share the third. James explained to everyone. "What about the fourth bedroom?" asked Officer Martinez as he carried in a heavy box. "That's my home office," James said. "I'm starting online classes next month." James had decided to study social work part-time. His experience with the girls had shown him a new calling, helping other foster children find permanent homes. The first night in their new house, James ordered pizza for everyone who helped move. As they all sat around eating, Tamika tapped her glass with a spoon. "I want to make a toast," she said, standing up. At 13, she was growing taller and more confident every day. "Thank you to everyone who helped us become a real family." Later that week, James took the girls to meet their mother for their first supervised visit at the family center. He was nervous, but he knew this was important. "Remember, this doesn't change anything between us," he assured the girls as they walked in. "But your mom loves you, and it's good for you to know her." The visit was awkward at first. Letitia seemed unsure how to act around her daughters after so much time apart. Little Ava didn't remember her at all and hid behind James's legs. "She likes dolls," James told Letitia gently, handing her a doll to offer Ava. "And if you make silly faces, she'll usually laugh." By the end of the hour, some of the tension had eased. As they were leaving, Letitia pulled James aside. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for taking care of them when I couldn't, and for not making me the bad guy." James nodded. They need all the love they can get. At home, James faced new challenges every day. Tamika was becoming a teenager with all the attitude that came with it. One evening, she slammed her bedroom door after arguing about her homework. "You don't understand what it's like to be me," she had shouted. James sat on the floor outside her room. "You're right," he said through the door. "I don't know what it's like to be you, but I'm trying to learn." Slowly, the door opened. Tamika's eyes were red. "The kids at school say you're not my real dad," she admitted. "They say our family is weird." James sighed. "Some people won't understand our family, but that doesn't make it less real." The next day, James contacted the Black Parents Association at the girls' school. He asked if they would welcome a white parent with black children. To his relief, they invited him to their next meeting. "You're raising black girls who will become black women," one mother told him honestly. "You need our help, and we're willing to give it." James attended every meeting, listening more than talking. He learned about hair products, skin care, and cultural events in the community. He made sure the girls had black dolls, books with black characters, and pictures of strong black women on their walls. On Sundays, they attended a diverse church where the girls joined the youth choir. James watched proudly as they sang, their voices blending with others. In this community, their family didn't seem so unusual. 6 months after moving into the new house, they celebrated with a housewarming party. Friends from school, church, the police department, and neighbors filled their backyard. As James watched his girls playing tag with the other children, Sergeant Carter joined him. "You're doing good, Brennan," she said. "It's not perfect, but it's working." James smiled. "We're figuring it out together, one day at a time." The morning of Tamika's high school graduation dawned bright and clear. James woke up early to make a special breakfast. At 18, Tamika had grown into a confident young woman with big dreams of becoming a lawyer. The kitchen still showed signs of last night's celebration. Colorful congratulations banners hung from the ceiling, and a large cake sat on the counter with, "We're proud of you, Tamika," written in purple icing. James flipped pancakes as the girls came downstairs one by one. Layla, now 16, helped set the table. Zoe, 15, poured orange juice for everyone. Keisha, 13, braided 12-year-old Maya's hair while 7-year-old Ava danced around the kitchen in her pajamas. "Dad, have you seen my graduation cap?" Tamika asked, rushing into the kitchen. Even after 5 years, hearing her call him Dad still made James's heart warm. "It's in my office," he answered. "I was adding something special to it." In his office, James showed Tamika what he had done. On top of her graduation cap, he had carefully attached a photo of her birth mother surrounded by the words, "She gave me life, he gave me wings." Tears filled Tamika's eyes. "It's perfect," she whispered, hugging him tight. Letitia would be at the graduation ceremony today. Over the years, her relationship with the girls had improved. She had stayed clean, held a steady job, and never missed her monthly visits. James had made sure the girls understood that loving their birth mother didn't diminish their love for him. The ceremony was held in the high school gymnasium. James sat with 5 excited girls and Letitia beside him. Many familiar faces surrounded them. Mrs. Garcia, now using a cane but still baking cookies for the girls. Sergeant Carter and her family. James's sister Jenny, and several officers from the precinct. "Look how far we've come," Sergeant Carter said, nodding toward the stage where Tamika sat with the other graduates. James thought back to that rainy night 5 years ago when he had found 6 frightened girls in a dirty apartment. Back then, he could never have imagined this moment. When Tamika's name was called, their entire row erupted in cheers. James and Letitia stood side by side, clapping and wiping away tears as Tamika crossed the stage. After the ceremony, they gathered for photos. James's police chief approached them with a smile. "Officer Brennan, I wanted to congratulate you and your family," he said. "Your work with the department's foster family support program has helped 20 other families this year alone." The program had been James's idea. After completing his social work degree, he had proposed a special unit to help police officers who wanted to foster or adopt children they encountered on the job. The department had accepted his proposal, making him the program coordinator. That evening, they hosted a backyard party for Tamika. Friends and family filled their home with laughter and love. As the sun began to set, James found a quiet moment with all 6 of his daughters on the porch swing. "I have something for each of you," he said, handing out small wrapped boxes. Inside each box was a silver necklace with 2 charms. One was a police badge, and the other was a heart with their initials engraved on it. "To remember that family isn't about matching skin or sharing blood," James explained. "It's about who loves you no matter what." Ava, still the baby of the family despite being 7, climbed onto James's lap. "Tell us the story of how we became a family," she requested, as she often did. "Well," James began, his arm around Tamika on one side and Ava on his lap. "It was a rainy night, and I got a call that changed everything." As James told the familiar story, he looked at the faces of his daughters, all different, all beautiful, all his. What had begun as a temporary solution had become his life's greatest purpose. Later, as the party wound down, Tamika found James alone in the kitchen. "Dad," she said softly, "thank you for choosing us." James shook his head. "No, Tamika. Thank you for choosing me back." Outside, the stars shone brightly over the house that had become a true home, filled with the love of a family that fate had brought together and choice had made permanent.